Welcome to the Catbird Quilts. I'm Kathy Martin. My small sewing space had a lot of challenges. So over Christmas, we redid it. And of course, I have a lot to say about it. So stay with me and let me show you. We have a modest sized home, and my sewing room, well, as my oldest put it, calling it a room is generous. It's a glorified hallway, to be honest with you. It's little, and you may not think so because the camera that I'm talking to you right now is in my kitchen. And so it's far away, and my husband, who is the editor and everything, sound engineer, cameraman, he does everything, has it positioned with a wide angle lens, so it looks so much bigger than it actually is. This room is 8 feet by 9 feet. And so if you're spatially challenged, like I am, he told me, he was like, it's 8 by 9. I'm like, that means nothing to me. So my wingspan is about 5 feet wide. So this, plus width of fabric from my left hand, is how big this room is. It is little. And there is a walking path through it because on the other side of my design wall is our den. So originally this room was just kind of like maybe it was an eat-in kitchen, maybe it was a den. Don't know. It was tiny. And it's been through several iterations since we've lived here. And during that time period, if I wanted to sew, my sewing machine was on the dining room table. And if I was in the middle of the project, when it came time for dinner, it was either too bad, so sad, family, you're going to sit on the couch, or I had to clean it up and put it away every time. And so if you're in that position, I feel you. If you're cutting fabric on your floor, I am with you. If you're cutting fabric on your dining room table, I have been there. I now am fortunate enough to have a dedicated sewing space, but it's still pretty small. And like all small things, small spaces, it's like the liquid luck in Harry Potter when whatever his name is, Froghorn. No, what's the name of it? I can't think of his name. He hands it. He's got that face that he goes like this. He hands it to Harry Potter and he goes, liquid luck, use it well. And that's what small sewing spaces, it's like you have to have them very, very thoughtfully designed so that you can put everything away. Well, everything. But put everything away and it function ergonomically. And I love efficiency. I love a good workflow. It's like one of my favorite things. And in order to do that, the things that are in that space have to be thoughtfully considered. And let me tell you, up until this point, they were not thoughtfully considered at all. So going into Christmas, Paul asked me what I wanted for Christmas, and I really didn't have a whole lot of wants, except for I really wanted to redo this space. And so we did. So the challenges that we faced, and it may be the challenges that every sewist faces, is what to do with the stuff that you need to do the things and how to arrange it with the limitations that you had. So if you've ever been to Ikea, which I say like a Southerner, Ikea, Ikea, you know that part of what makes that so appealing and their products and their arrangement is they take these itty bitty spaces and make them really functional. Really, or any makeover show you've ever watched. And I love and hate watching those makeover shows because on the one hand, I mean, it's like watching a train wreck when the people first come in and nothing makes any sense, where the family has put everything. And then they come in and, like, well, why don't we put the toys where the children play with the toys? And it's like, oh, I never heard of it. And then they redo it and it makes a lot of sense. What happened initially was we bought this table and it will, I can raise it or lower it. I don't know, there's a crank on it and I can make it taller or shorter. And that's great because I can raise it up and use it as a cutting table because I'm tall. So really that's what we try to do in this space. And in fact, did use Ikea products to do so. So this table that I have, and it was the first thing that came into the space, and what you've been seeing if you've been watching, is my sewing table. But the reality is I was never raising it because my sewing machine is on it and I'm always sewing something. And so I was using my dining room table for my cutting or my living room floor. And I have laughed and said that in our house, because we have kind of a small house, every available horizontal surface is covered with some kind of fabric, either shirts I'm breaking down, fabric I'm considering for a new project, or fabric that I'm currently working on in various states of cutting or needs to be pressed. And it was just really starting to create these feelings of anxiety for me because it's just everywhere. And I have done, I've collected them into a whip pile and I've done some organization and it's been great. But when the bare bones are not thoughtfully considered, it doesn't matter how much you organize, it's not going to work, and it wasn't working. So what I have had behind me, which is we normally take down for the videos, and today is no exception. There's an ironing board usually here. I have left my iron here to jog my memory that that's normally what's here. And we hung a shelf above the ironing board that initially just held the tools that I needed for ironing. So that's lint brush, tailor's clapper, water to refill the iron, spray starch, so on and so forth. And I had some like decorative items because you want your sewing space to be something you enjoy, but I don't like a lot of visual clutter. So it was up above, which was great. But then it started collecting as thoughtless spaces often do. And so I had sewing needles in little containers and my bobbins in little containers. And I had my walking foot and a pin cushion. And anytime I reached for anything, it knocked it over or had to rearrange. And so the shelf was great for the ironing board, but basically not good for anything else. And I didn't really have any drawer storage. I just had horizontal surfaces. And so as we started talking about what we needed to do in this space, and my rulers were on that, sidebar. My rulers were on that shelf too, all stacked on top of each other. So if I needed the big one, I had to take them all down and get the big one out and put the other ones back. And then, okay, you get the point. So what I said that I wanted to start with was another table that I could put into that high position. Just really, I wanted this identical table so that I could have a cutting station so that every time we sat down for a meal, I didn't have to clean off my cutting board. I always say cutting board. It's like me calling it a seam reaper. I mean, it's so ingrained that it's a cutting board, cutting mat and fabric. Now I have a place for that. And it's right over here as I'm motioning off camera. And I can keep my projects going and not have to pack them all back up and put them away. And so when we did that, then all of a sudden I have a sewing table, an ironing station, and a cutting station. And I was like, oh, it's like a kitchen triangle, except for sewing. And so come to find out, there is actually something called the sewing triangle. And those are the things that you need, which is a place to cut with fabric, your sewing table, and your ironing station. And so now I have that. In the same time, we realized one shelf for all of the itty bitty little things that I have, it did not work. It was not working. And so we got a storage container with shallow drawers. And so that has my bobbins and my thread. Eventually, I will need a thread spool holder. You know, the kind that look like it's stuff coming out of the wall and then the thread spools sit down on it. So we'll probably eventually work there. But right now I just only have enough thread to fit in a shallow drawer. I have my extra blades for my rotary cutter. I have thimbles. You get the idea. So just all of these little things that you don't realize that you need. So I have put it away for nice, clean, organized purposes. But I have a pair of snips that I keep next to my sewing machine, which is right here. And I have a pair of snips that I keep on my ironing board for loose threads. And then I have my really great rotary cutter on my cutting mat, but I also have scissors next to me so that if I missed a little section, I can just cut that off. Or if I'm doing binding and I want to just snip that last little bit when I match them up. So it's that really seriously considering, what do I use at each station and what do I need to be able to put away, but within easy access. So that's what we did. And we painted the walls because we love a good neutral. Oh my goodness, I love a neutral. So sometimes when I would have something on the design wall, the previous color was like a seafoam green, like a muted seafoam. And the colors would clash, and it's kind of like, and it reflected that blue-green color both onto the design wall and to what I'm working on and onto me. So we decided to go for this neutral. It's kind of tan, kind of gray, kind of that no man's land of peaceful neutrals. And my husband and daughter painted it one day while I was at work. And I came home and walked into the space and went, oh, I felt like I had stepped into a really high-end spa. Not that I've been into a lot of high-end spas, but it just has that calming effect. And suddenly I found myself even more wanting to be here. And so I'm going to say we a lot. It was really Paul. Painted the walls. He really didn't think that I was going to need the shelf because I have the storage space now. But what I quickly discovered working in the space is I still need that shelf for the water and the starch and to get the clapper off of my ironing board so they have more ironing board space. So we relocated the shelf, which used to be just right here out of the line of the camera, is now on that wall. And because my little pieces and things and walking foot, and, all the detritus, but needful detritus, has been organized thoughtfully into the storage space. Now my pretty things that I want to see are on the shelf along with just the bare bones of what I need for that ironing station. And it's right there on this wall. And so I'm going to look. I have two paintings that my younger daughter did. I have a clothespin doll that I made that kind of looks a little bit like me, or maybe the me I want to be. It's up there. I have my Pantone cards that are great for color consideration. I have my huge jar of quilting safety pins that when I need them, I need a lot of them and I need them accessible, but I only need them as obviously I'm getting ready to do a quilt sandwich. So it doesn't need to be right here next to me like my pin bowl does, but it needs to be nearby. And then I have my markers that I use for fabrics, either for a quilt tag to go on the back, quilt label to go on the back of a completed quilt, or if I get that urge again to create my own little fabric pieces and decide I want to color little frog emojis, it's there, but it doesn't need to be here right next to me. I also seriously considered moving the colored pencils. I have an array of colored pencils that I use with graph paper to draw out quilt patterns, like do my own coloring page. And so I do use them, and more frequently than you'd think. But I don't use them every day or maybe even every week. And I almost moved them because I don't use it constantly. But they are so colorful and happy, and it gives me joy when I look over there and see them. And so I left them because it's not in the way, and they're pretty, and it makes me happy. The storage space that I have also to my left, I wanted it to really not have a lot of things on the surface, but I did get for Christmas a beautiful walnut ruler holder. And so my larger rulers we hung on the wall, and then the smaller rulers that I use all the time. So my bias binding ruler that I feel like I could not live without, my 5.5-inch square that I feel like I could not live without. I have a little neon yellow green, I think it's 2.5 by 8. I use a lot. It goes there. So my smaller rulers that I use really constantly are in that lovely walnut support. And I have next to it one of those fat red tomato pin cushions, and I don't use it. True confessions, I don't use it. I love it because it reminds me of my mother, and it reminds me of my grandmother's. It's that classic red tomato pin cushion with the strawberry that has the sharpener on the inside. And I love it. I don't use it, but I want to see it. And so they're there together. Do you see me smiling? Because I'm glancing over and going, oh my goodness, I love that so much. I also got this doesn't have anything to do with makeovers, but I just am so excited. I got a set of scissors that is an absolute joy. They are an absolute joy to use. It's like I used the first pair. The name of it is Guggenheim. I'll put all of these links in the description below. They're heavy. It's like that thing in Jurassic Park. Ooh, what are these? Are they heavy? Yes. It's expensive. Put it away. So I picked them up. I was like, oh, and was cutting through a shirt, and it was, like butter. Just, you can even hear it do the like. So I have, last time, I have that I got to add to my space. There's a pair of, it's kind of like snips, but they've got a really big handle on them. So it's like if you need really fine work, but it's something bulky, like a corner of a seam. And then I have very small, like embroidery scissors. I'm using likes because I don't actually know the names of any of these things. So really where we're trying to go, and by we, I mean me, but also Paul, as such a believer in what I enjoy doing, is to have a space that functions well, but also is inspiring and is happy and joyful and is a place that I want to be, instead of it being so chaotic and so many projects out and nowhere to put anything that it kind of sapped my desire to be in the space. So as we put that and realized we have the sewing triangle, my cutting table will stay in that high position, and beneath it I'll have my basket of whips, which is just a white laundry basket with all of my whips in it, roughly organized by Ziploc. And then next to it is a tote full of shirts that need to be broken down. Right now they're all linen, and I have a stack of sheets, thrifted sheets that I bought the other day, and I have to stop. This has nothing to do with makeover. I bought 5 sheets and a pillowcase. I think the total was $22. And so the sheets can be used as backings on quilts. Now, some people are anti. I'm not. And the lady that's been doing my long arming is not. So that's great. So she's not like, no, I can't do that. And so they come out to like, it's something crazy, like $450 for a whole quilt backing. One of them is a full flat sheet. It's crazy. Okay. But I had to share. So I have realized finally that I'm going to have projects on the go. I don't know if it's Canadians or Europeans that say on the go instead of whips. I love it, on the go. So I'm going to have projects that are in the works all the time, and I'm going to have a pile of shirts. I just am. I'm never going to buy the shirts, come home, wash them, and break them down. I'm going to have a pile of shirts. And so I need a place to put a pile of shirts. So right now, I have a tote that I can put a pile of shirts in, and I have my whip basket, and it's out of the way because when I'm cutting, I'm standing. And so it's underneath, it's out of the way. We got 2 new lights. So I have, my former light was a big arc with a big drum style lampshade. And I loved it, and it was really not working. So now we have 2 torchères, one right here, which sounds so fancy, doesn't it? It's just a tall light that opens up to the top. So I have one right here and one over by the cutting table. So I have good lighting where I'm working. And then there's enough space around my cutting table that I can be on either side. So even though I don't have one of those nifty little lazy Susan mats that turns, I can move my body and get to where I need to on my cutting table. And there's still enough space for us to hang, finally, the aluminum, I think they're aluminum, they may be steel, T-squares, the long sheetrock T-squares that I use for squaring up a quilt that were always falling over and making a horrible, scary, loud metal noise. We have those on hooks. I have my extra cutting mat on a hook. My bigger cutting rulers, tools are in front of the cutting table, neatly displayed. And I just feel like someone has breathed new air into my sewing lungs. I just feel excited and hopeful, and things are orderly and laid out well. I just wanted to show you what I've done. You guys, you didn't see the chaos that was off screen, and I'm glad, because it would have sucked your sojo as well. It just is like a black hole of taking away joy and happiness over there. Now it's nice and neat. And it's just such a good reminder that when we spend a little time being thoughtful about our spaces, even if they're small, even if there's a running hallway right through it, we can make these spaces work for us in a way that is enjoyable and hopefully inspiring to me and to you. And it doesn't have to be an entire basement devoted to fabric storage and quilt making. It can be a little pass through and it work for you. Thanks for coming along with me today for me to show you my small sewing space. I hope it's inspired you to think through your space and make it something that you love. I'm Kathy Martin, and this is the Catbird Quilts. Thanks so much for watching.